During the endless Seder dinner and the even more endless explanations from the Haggadah, Hannah frequently glanced out the window. A full moon was squeezed between two of the project's apartment buildings. Her grandfather droned on and on about the plagues and the exodus from Egypt. Maybe it was an interesting story if someone else told it, Hannah thought, but Grandpa's Will's had a voice that buzzed like the plague of locusts, and he made sour lessons at every pause. The Seder wasn't even in the right order, not like they taught in Sunday school. When Hannah tried to protest, she was shushed by Uncle Sam. "It's Will's way. Don't make trouble," he said. Hannah stared at the moon. Tomorrow they'd be going to Grandpa Dan's for the next Seder. At least there'd be 3 cousins her own age, all boys, but that couldn't be helped. And they get to sit at the kitchen table away from the grown-ups, and Grandpa Will wouldn't be there shouting and making a scene, only Grandpa Dan. Sweet, gentle, silly Grandpa Dan, who told stories in between the readings and said things like, "How do I know? I was there." Beside her, Aaron was moving restlessly, getting ready to ask the second question. With the yarmulke covering his fair hair, he looked like a miniature Grandpa Will. Hannah almost laughed aloud, remembering what Rosemary had asked her first and only holiday visit. "Why do they wear those beanies?" Aaron's hand shook, and a page in the Haggadah flipped over by itself. Hannah reached out and smoothed it back for him. He smiled up at her gratefully. He has the greatest smile, Hannah thought. He won't need braces. "Stop worrying," she mouthed at him. At her urging, he plunged into the second question, chanting the Hebrew perfectly because he'd memorized it. But when he looked down at the book to read the English translation, he stumbled over the word herb, pronouncing the H. Uncle Sam snorted, and Aaron stopped, mortified. He looked around the table. Everyone was smiling at him. It was clear that he made some silly mistake, but he didn't know what he'd done. He turned helplessly to Hannah. "Herb," she corrected with a whisper. "Don't pronounce the H." He nodded gratefully and started on the English again, finishing too loudly and in a rush. A sure sign he was unhappy. "On all other nights we eat vegetables and herbs of all kinds. Why on this night do we eat bitter herbs especially?" Why indeed, Hannah wondered, since they're so disgusting. Rosemary gets to eat jelly beans and I get to eat horseradish. It isn't fair. She suddenly realized that she had spoken the last words out loud, and everyone had heard. Embarrassed, she stared down at her hands, but her anger at the injustice continued. "Of course it isn't fair," whispered Aunt Ava to her. "But what has fair got to do with it?" She smiled, and to break the tension started singing "Tayanu" in her strong musical voice. The arousing, repetitive song carried them all along, even Hannah's mother, who was tone deaf. Da-da-da-you, da-da-ya-nu, da-you-nu, da-you-nu. Hannah knew it meant it would have been enough, but she suddenly felt that nothing was enough except to get out of the room and that Seder in which nothing fair or fun was happening. And then she remembered the wine. That, at last, was new. When the Seder began again, she would get another glass of watered wine. For the first time, she was being allowed to drink along with the grown-ups. "Let Hannah join the toast for real," Grandpa Will had said before the Seder had begun. "Now, Poppy," Hannah's mother protested, "she's only 12. 13, Hannah said. Ava had patted her hand. "And when my sister Ava was 13, what she would have given for a little glass of watered wine," Grandpa Will had begun. It was the same kind of argument he used for everything. He never had to finish the sentence, for no one could ever withstand the promise of guilt. "All right, Poppy." Grandpa Will had smiled, turning to Ava. "See, they can't keep her a baby forever. Babies like Aaron would have to make do with grape juice." Hannah had been grateful to her grandfather for that, and she had discovered with the very first toast that she liked the sweet, cloying taste of the wine, even though it made her head buzz. "Hannah," Aaron tugged on her sleeve, and his eyes were full of mischief. "It's time." Time? For a moment she thought he meant time for the next toast. And then she realized he meant to steal the efkuman, the matzo wrapped in the blue embroidered cloth. Looking around the table, she saw the adults were suddenly very busy talking to one another. She remembered when, as an only child, she'd been the one to take the efkuman, and she'd thought herself terribly clever when she found it under Grandpa Will's chair. Of course, now she knew he always hid it there for easy discovery. She smiled at Aaron, suddenly feeling very adult. "You go look for it. I'll keep watch here." "Okay." He slipped from his chair and crawled around to the head of the table. Then he leaped to his feet, holding the blue cloth and its crumbling contents high over his head. "I found it, Poppy. Now I get to hide it." He ran out of the room, but no one leaped up to follow. He's going to hide in the bathroom, Hannah said to no one in particular. He always does. Hush, Hannah, don't spoil things, Aunt Rose said. You always hid the Afkoman under Grandma Bell's pillow, Aunt Ava said. You knew? Sam Guffad, you left enough crumbs. Knowing and not knowing, her mother said inside, it's all part of the game. And the game is to uncover the hidden order of the universe. Seder means order. I read that in the book. What hidden order? Do you think there is order back in the camps? Do you think... Ava interrupted smoothly. Lily, you are much too serious about these things. Let the children play. They are children for such a short time. It's not as if we keep kosher or do things as a rabbi would. We do it for the children. Isn't that right, Belle? Grandma Bell nodded, so they can have fun and remember their history. Brushing the stray wisps of white hair from her broad forehead, Ava rose. Here we come, Aaron, ready or not. Signaling the others to follow her, she left the dining room. The men sat at the table talking, but Aunt Ava and Aunt Rose went to the bedroom in noisy search. Hannah's mother was almost as loud, looking about the kitchen. They spent minutes calling out to each other about how difficult Aaron was to find this year, until Grandpa Will put his fingers in his mouth and let out a piercing whistle that brought them all back. Hannah had been waiting at the bathroom door as if on guard. At the whistle, the door opened and Aaron peeked out. Hannah, I'm in here, he whispered. Big surprise, Hannah said, slipping into the room. Look where I hid the Afghan. He took the blue cloth out of the dirty clothes basket. That's disgusting, Aaron, hiding in someone's laundry. They never looked in here, Hannah. I flushed the toilet and pretended to be going, and no one came for it. He grinned. You're so smart, Ron. I had to laugh at his earnestness. What are you going to ask Poppy for? A baseball glove. She knew how much he wanted one. He'd been saving his Hanukkah money and doing extra chores. Good choice, she said. No matter what Poppy offers you to buy back the Afghan, you hold out for that glove. She looked at the mirror, herself in the bathroom mirror, wondering when the braces would come off. This summer, she was lucky. I got a Barbie doll dress collection once. She didn't admit that she'd regretted it right after. When she turned to say something else, Aaron was already gone. The rest of the Passover meal was tempting, but Hannah had eaten so much at Rosemary's, she only picked at her food. Besides, her head was beginning to throb. Uncle Sam poured another quarter glass of wine to her glass and filled the rest of the way with water for the next blessing. Suddenly, she didn't want any more. My head feels funny, she said to her mother. I told you she was too young for wine. Mother said with a sigh, even watered wine. Uncle Sam handed around the large cut crystal goblet, Elijah's cup, and everyone poured around a little bit of wine from their own glasses into it. When it was Hannah's turn, she emptied her entire glass. Elijah can have it all, she said grandly. Grandpa Will smiled down the long table at her. What a good girl. For being so unselfish, you can open the door for the prophet and welcome him in. I want to do that, Aaron called out. That's the most fun. Hannah will do it, Aaron, Grandpa said, because she was so generous with her gift. He can have my whole cup too, Aaron said. Sacrifice unasked is so much the greater, Grandpa Will stated flatly. Come, Hannah. Hannah stood reluctantly. She felt like a fraud. She hadn't given the rest of the wine out of generosity, but because she didn't want it. It was no sacrifice. Remember, Hannah, we open our door to remind ourselves of the time Jews were forced to keep their doors open to show the Christians they were not practicing blood rituals. Ha! His last syllable was a noisy punctuation, as if we were the bloody ones. Aunt Ava leaned over and laid her hand quietly on his. It was enough to calm him. He smiled at Hannah. Open the door to Elijah, child, and invite him in with an open heart. Slowly, Hannah moved towards the front door, feeling incredibly dumb. She certainly didn't believe that the prophet Elijah would come to the apartment door any more than she believed Darth Vader or Robin Hood or the Easter Bunny would. No one believed those superstitions anymore, no one except babies, like Aaron. Glancing over her shoulder, Hannah saw they were all watching her intently. Aaron bounced up and down on his chair. Open it, Hannah, he cried. Open it for Elijah. Baby stories, she thought angrily, unlatching the double bolt. Flinging the door open wide, she whispered, ready or not, here I come. Outside, where there should have been a long, windowless hall with dark green numbered doors leading to other apartments, there was a greening field in the lowering sky. The moon hung ripely between two heavy gray clouds. A bird pelted the air with a strange, lilting song, and across the field, stepped in the furrows, marched a shadowy figure. He had a shapeless cap on his head, a hoe over his shoulder, and he was singing. Who asked to be buried alive? You know that no one forced you.